So with Radzen Blazor Studio open, I want to go to File and say New Application. And then I want to choose the Blazor Server application. So we just hit Next. Then we want to create a project name. We could just call it To-Do Project. And then we have to use the .NET 7 framework, because that is currently the only framework that Radzen Blazor Studio supports right now. And then when it comes to themes, I actually want to choose the dark theme, but you could choose whatever you want. You can still follow along in this video. I will just make it a dark theme. And we want to enable that we're using partial classes. So this just means that we have a separate UI file and a separate backend file. With Blazor, you are able to put both the code behind and the UI in the same .razor file. But for this project, it's okay that we're going to use partial classes for the backend, or the code behind as it's called. And now when it comes to directory, we have to choose a folder that we want to include the project to. So we click on the folder over here. And in my case, I already made a empty folder on the desktop. So I just want to choose this to-do list and say select folder. And let's hit finish. So now that our project is created, we can go and expand it over here to see that the project is set up correctly over here. But to create the to-do list UI, we actually have to set up a database connection first. So let's go and open SQL Server Management Studio. You can of course connect with MySQL or some other SQL technologies. But in my case, I want to use MS SQL. So let's open SQL Server Management Studio. So I'll just type SSMS like this, and I will open Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio 18. So now when that's open, I actually want to copy this server name. So Control C, because we have to use the server name to connect to this server when we connect from Radzen Blazor Studio. But for now, let's go and click Connect, and let's expand the database and the system databases, and then I want to use this master database. And when I expand the tables, I already have some article tags from some old tutorials I made, but now we want to right click and say new table. And first I want to go down to the properties and say that this should be called to do. So now we have a to do table, and then I want it to have an ID. And it should just be a int. So let's say int. We don't want to allow zeros. And next we want to have a to do thing. So we will just say to do. And it should be an int char with maybe 100. And again, we don't want to allow nulls. And then the final thing is to right click the ID to set it as primary key. So let's go and right click the tab here and say save to do. And now if we update the tables folder, we will now get a to do table. So now we should be set up 100% inside our SQL server. So let's minimize this window. And inside Radzen Blazor Studio, we want to click the database icon and say MS SQL. It is on this page that we want to paste the server name. And the authentication type should be Windows, because we're just local on this PC. The database that we want to connect to was called master, and we don't want to encrypt the connection. Again, because we are just local on our own machine. So let's go and hit next. So this is the page where we're going to scaffold the models. And in my case, if I expand the tables, you can see I have some article tags and tag. I don't want to have them in this project, so I just want to have the to-do that we just created. And for this project, we can just leave all the configurations as it is. So we will just say next. So now we're going to do the fun part, where we're going to create the UI or the CRUD operation pages. So let's go and tap this on. And I've tried to play around with these a little bit, and I think this one is actually okay for our to-do list project. So let's go and click next. And now we can go and expand the to-do project models called master. And inside here we can see that we only have our to-do model right now. And that's okay, because that's all we need for this project. And when we look at the configurations, we want to allow editing and we want to allow inserting some new to-do things. We also want to allow sorting, but I don't think we want to use the paging because we just want to make a small to-do list. And we want to enable filtering, that's fine. And we want to use partial classes for the generated UI pages that is going to be created, or that's going to be scaffolded as it's called. And then a nice thing to have is this open, edit, and add pages in dialogues. So it will not open a totally new page that we want to add things to. It just want to open a dialogue so everything is more fluid. And we could also enable the export to Excel because it's a to-do list. So if you want to print it out or something, you can export it to Excel and print it out. And a nice feature is also this search as you type. So there will be a search bar, and when you type, it will just find the results as you type. And let's go and skip the next two because we don't want to use them, but we want to use this double click to edit because I also think that's a nice feature. And then let's go and say finish. So it will now scaffold the pages, or actually just the one page that we want to have a to-do list on. So if we look in the Explorer over here, we now have the models and we have master. And inside the master, we have our to-do model. And inside pages, we also now have these components where we want to add a to-do and edit a to-do, but these will just now be handled as dialog boxes instead of a whole page for itself. So the page we want to look at is this to-do.razor. A very nice thing about Radzen Blazor Studio is that we get this UI view where you can just click the elements. And then you can add properties and styling and events to all elements on the page without actually doing any coding. And if we go up here, we can see that we have a design view, we have a split view, and we have a source view. And what I want to choose is the split for now, because then we can both see the UI and the code behind. And to make this to-do list a little bit more clean, I actually want to remove this ID. So as you can see here, we have a Radzen data grid, and inside that we have some columns where we also have the ID column, and I don't think we need to use the ID or be able to see it because it really doesn't matter for the user. So we can go and remove this, and now you can see it just disappeared up in the list. And the next thing I want to do is to just expand this a little bit so we can see the UI a little bit better. And then I want to set a max width on this table so it don't go 100% because it's a little bit big for just having one column to a to-do thing and one column to this delete button. So over in our styles panel here, I want to select, instead of flex, I want to use the block. And then we want to set a max width up here at the size and spacing section. We have a max width. I want to set that to 300 pixels. And as you might notice down here in the code, it actually just inputted some style inline code here with display block and a max width of 300. So I think it's very super powerful that you can just use this UI over here to specify the styling of every element on the page. So now I want to center this inside our col MD12 div here, which in Bootstrap just means that we have a column that expands the whole width of its parent. So now you can see we have this container right here where I want to center this table inside. And a nice thing is also when I have the Radzen data grid right here, you can see up here that we have a path to the parent, and I can actually just click this. Then I will choose the parent, and again you can see we also have a row, so if I click this, I've also chosen the row. But let's go and click the table and go to styles, and then on the margin here we want to click this button, and to center a element that is set to display block, we want to say that the margin left should be auto and also margin right should be auto. And now it will be centered. So I'll actually just do the same with the search bar, but now let's try and do it inside the code. So if we open this a little bit more, we can see that the styling that is set on our table, we can just go and copy and paste this. So let's copy this and go up and see where is the search bar, and it's right here. We have a display block with a width of 100 and we don't want that, so let's just paste in what we copied right here. So now we can see the search bar has also been very small now, but if we want to have it to be 300 pixels, we don't want to say max width, we just want to say width. So let's go and remove the max. And now you can see that it will fit the table. So the last thing I want to do is to put this headline above here and centered, and then the export and add just above this search bar. So if we just hover over here, we can see that we have a column 12 and we do have a row. And now we can see down in the code here that it marked all what we have chosen in the UI. But let's go and click this text and let's go to styles. And then down here in the typography section, we want to choose the alignment where we want to center it. So let's hit center. And now you can see it's centered inside this element. And then down in the code, I actually want to make this a 12 instead of 6. So it gets its own row. And the same with the export and add buttons. It will be this section. So I also want to change this to 12. And the last thing is that we don't want to justify content MD end. We want to do it center instead. And then let's maybe add some margin to this text so it's not that close to the export and add buttons. So again, over in the styles panel over here, we again want to click this margin and say that the bottom margin should be maybe 50 pixels. And that's maybe too much. So let's say 30 pixels. And I think that's fine. So now let's go and run this application to see how it looks. So up in the right corner, I want to click run. And now when the project is up and running, I want to click the to-dos. And here we have our to-do page. So let's go and click add. And this is actually not what we want because we don't want the ID. We don't want to have anything to do with it. So let's go and close our application and say stop. And now you can see here we have the edit view, where I want to remove this ID section. So if we're going to say split again, and then we want to delete all this ID content, just like this. So now it's removed from up here. And then we want to go to the to-do model. And we actually don't want to have it required. We want this to have database generated, so it will automatically increment the ID. And then we also want to go to the add to-do razor page and also remove this ID. So we want to say split. And then again, we have this section, which is all about the ID. So let's go and remove this. And then let's go and run the application again to see if this works. And let's try to click the add button. And now we can only see this, but of course we did delete the UI for the ID. So let's say that our to-do thing is to watch TV and say save. Then we can see that it actually still don't work. And after debugging this for maybe 5-10 minutes, I actually think I found what the issue is. So let's close down this project and say that the application should stop. And then I actually want to go to the SQL Server Management Studio, because we have made the ID a primary key, but we never said that it should increment the ID by 1. So by right clicking our table and say design, we come to this page. And then when we click on the ID row, we get this column properties down here. And under the identity specification, we want to expand that and then click on this is identity. Just double click this. That it will say yes, and now it will auto increment the ID every time we insert a column. So let's go back to Radzen Blazor Studio, and the only thing we want to do here is to actually delete the to-do and say delete. And then we also want to delete under the services, we want to delete this master service. So now our to-dos razor page will say oh no, because we both need a model and the service that actually handle the model. But I will just go to database again, and we already have the master database connection. So let's just click next. And I want to make sure I only use the to-do table in the database. So let's click next. And I don't want to create the CRUD operations pages because we already have them. So I'll just say next. And now you can see that our page is running again. But I think there is maybe a small bug in Radzen Blazor Studio right now. Maybe it's going to be fixed later on. But as you can see now in our folders, we do not have the to-do model. And we don't have anything under our services. So the only thing to make these things appear again will actually be going to File and say Open Application and just open the same application that we are into. And now if we expand the project, we can see that our model now has the to-do model. So let's try and click on that. And now we can see that the model is actually back to how it was before. So let's click Run and go to our to-dos page, and let's click Add, and then let's type Watch TV again, and let's say Save. And I think maybe this time is because I did not save this file over in our database. So I'll just right click and say Save to Do. And I can see this is not permitted. I think these errors should be very beginners errors that everyone that has a knowledge should already know from the beginning. But I'm really mostly into MySQL and not MS SQL, so I'll just try to figure this out. I think I will just create a new table where the identity will be incremented by 1 from the beginning, so I'll just do that. So now I just created the table from scratch again, and if I click the ID, it's now a yes to auto increment. So let's go back to Radzen Blazor Studio to see if this works. I actually already have the project up and running, so let's just hit save again. And now it actually worked. So now when I double click the Watch TV, we actually get the edit component instead of the add component. So let's just edit this to have a 2 behind and say save. And once again, this was an error that really showed the knowledge I have about MS SQL and the way you're going to make this work, just like I have done it now. Enter and just say that it should be max. And if it is saying that you're not allowed to recreate the table, then go to Tools and Options, and then under this Designers, you want to tap this off, prevent saving changes that require table recreation, because when you tap this off, you are actually allowed to edit inside the table. So if we go back to the project again, we can now see that if we type something else, that we can say save and it will update automatically. So let's try and add a couple more things. Go running maybe and say save. And let's try one more and say watch Netflix and say save again. Then we can go and search for something. Let's type watch, and then you can see that it will only take the watch that word is included. And if you delete it again, you can see that everything is going to be returned again. So the last part is actually just that we have to delete something, and it's very simple because it should work. Just hitting the trash can and then say OK, and then it's gone. So I think this is a good place to stop this video. And if you came this far, then thanks for watching. And I really have to get some skills in MS SQL. There is some differences from MySQL, but of course, if you also are a MySQL expert instead of MS SQL, you can use a MySQL database connection inside Radzen Blazor Studio instead. I think for me it would have solved a lot of these problems. However, Radzen Blazor Studio have done its job. I think it's an amazing tool, and I will have some more videos about Radzen Blazor Studio soon. But for now, thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe the video, and then have a nice day. Bye.